Imagine an intelligence agency that never needs to steal your secrets. It doesn't need wiretaps. It doesn't need spies in trench coats. It doesn't even need to hack you. All it needs is your dating profile, your fitness tracker, your LinkedIn page, your DNA ancestry kit, your sleep app, your grocery store rewards card, your Instagram stories, everything you willingly typed, tapped, posted, uploaded, or wore on your wrist. And here's the part that nobody wants to admit. The greatest surveillance network ever built was not designed by governments. It was designed by lifestyle companies, and we didn't resist it. No, we subscribe to it. We pay for it. The most dangerous dossier of your life is the one you volunteered to build. We say we value privacy, yet we pay for private companies to track everything about our lives. Yeah, this episode's gonna hurt. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome to Midweek Sit Rep, your bi-weekly briefing on national security and the forces that shape it. My name is Jerry Fowler, and I'm your host. Every other week, I give you the context you need to see what's really going on so you can stay mission-focused. Today, we're talking about something most people don't think of as national security issues. Dating apps, fitness trackers, DNA tests, professional networks, social media, the everyday lifestyle tech we use to meet people, stay healthy, build careers, and understand ourselves. But when you step back and look at how these systems actually work, what they collect, how they connect, and who can analyze them, a different picture starts to emerge. This is the age of everything is national security. And we know power isn't just about laws, force, or coercion. It's also about data. And the most valuable data isn't stolen. It's surrendered. Quietly. Voluntarily. In exchange for convenience, connection, and personalization. Today, we're going to talk about how Honeytraps, health apps, and everyday lifestyle technology became a national security risk, not because they were designed to be dangerous, but because they were designed to know us. And knowing people at scale is one of the most powerful capabilities there is. Most people don't think of lifestyle apps as risky. They think of them as being useful. A quick swipe on a dating app while waiting in line, a morning run tracked on Strava just to stay motivated, a LinkedIn connection request that might help your career, a DNA test taken out of curiosity, a fitness tracker that tells you how you slept, or why you feel tired, or whether you're optimized. None of this feels dangerous. In fact, it feels responsible, efficient, modern. And that's the point. Because lifestyle apps don't feel like surveillance tools. They feel like self-improvement tools. But here's the shift most people never make. These apps aren't just helping you understand yourself. They're teaching someone else how to understand you. Every one of these platforms is quietly answering the same questions. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you go? Who do you trust? What motivates you? What stresses you out? And what patterns do you repeat? Individually, that information looks trivial. But together, it forms something incredibly powerful, a behavioral model. Not just who you are, but how predictable you are. And predictability is the currency of modern power. This is why intelligence services, advertisers, and corporations all want the same thing. Not secrets, patterns. Patterns of movement, patterns of emotion, of desire, of vulnerability. This isn't espionage in the old sense. Nobody's breaking into your house or tapping your phone. This is something quieter. This is espionage by consent. You're not being surveilled against your will. You're being observed with your permission. Because the value proposition feels harmless. Track your health. Track your progress. Track your connections. Track your life. And in doing so, you create something intelligence agencies used to spend years trying to assemble. A living, updating profile of who you are and how you behave when no one's watching. Lifestyle apps don't just measure your habits, they map your predictability. And once predictability exists, influence isn't far behind. Let's talk about dating apps, not as scandals, not as traps, but as systems. For decades, intelligence services have used romance as a tool, not because it's dramatic, but because it works. People lower their guard when they feel chosen, when they feel understood, when someone seems interested in them and not their job. What's changed isn't the tactic, it's the efficiency. Now, in the past, a romance operation required time, travel, cover stories, and risk. Now it requires a profile picture, Wi-Fi, and patience. No random hotel lobby meetings, no dead drops, no clandestine rendezvous, just conversation. And the most important shift, the target now does most of the work. Real-world cases show the same pattern repeating. Operatives posing as romantic interests to learn routines, locations, and habits. Professional connections that slowly migrate from career talk to personal trust. Casual conversations that turn into requests for photos, files, or even favors. Emotional hooks that eventually become leverage. What makes dating apps uniquely powerful isn't deception, it's context. On these platforms, people expect intimacy. They expect disclosure. And they expect vulnerability. So they share things they would never hand to a stranger on the street. On a dating app, people routinely volunteer physical details and daily habits, photos that reveal location, routines, or metadata, where they work, or where they used to work, when they've just moved to a new city, when they're lonely, stressed, or recently divorced, how often they travel, what hours they're usually awake, what they're looking for, emotionally, socially, psychologically. None of this feels sensitive in isolation, but intelligence work doesn't rely on single data points. It relies on pattern recognition. A profile isn't valuable because of what it says. It's valuable because of what it predicts. A human intelligence officer in the 1980s would have needed months, sometimes years, to learn this much about a person. Today, much of it is summarized in a few screens and chat history. This doesn't mean everyone on a dating app is a spy. That's not the point. The point is the architecture favors exploitation. Dating apps didn't invent the honey trap. They removed the friction. They didn't eliminate espionage risk. They streamlined it. And once emotional connection becomes a data stream, influence doesn't need force, it just needs timing. Now let's move from romance to resume. Because if dating apps reveal who you are, professional platforms reveal who you're becoming. And that's often even more valuable. LinkedIn may be the most underappreciated intelligence data set in the world. Not because it's a secret, but because it's systemic. Think about what LinkedIn does exceptionally well. It maps corporate and government organization charts, not once, but continuously. It shows who just got promoted, who just moved teams, who just left government for industry. It reveals contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, and the entire ecosystem around sensitive industries. It quietly signals who might have had access to classified programs, proprietary technology, or strategic decision-making. None of this requires hacking. It's all there because professionals are encouraged to keep profiles up to date. And that's where the tension lives. From the user's perspective, LinkedIn is about opportunity, visibility, momentum, staying relevant. From an intelligence perspective, LinkedIn is about target selection. That's why warnings about foreign intelligence recruitment don't usually involve dramatic spy stories. They involve messages that look like this. Can we talk about your expertise? Would you consider a short consulting arrangement? Your background is impressive. I'd love to connect. It's no pressure, no urgency, no obvious red flags, because the approach isn't designed to alarm you. It's designed to flatter you. And most people don't see a threat because it doesn't feel like one. LinkedIn doesn't feel dangerous. It feels professional, aspirational. It feels like progress. And that's precisely why it works. Ambition is one of the most reliable human motivators. It drives people to share more, explain more, contextualize more, to clarify their experience, to describe their responsibilities, to explain what they used to do and what they're hoping to do next. Over time, those small disclosures add up, not into secrets, but into access indicators. And access indicators are often more valuable than the secrets themselves. Now, this doesn't mean everyone reaching out is hostile. Most aren't. But it does mean the platform is structurally optimized for exposure, not discretion. LinkedIn doesn't leak secrets, it leaks access. And once access becomes visible, it becomes targetable. Not because people are careless, but because the system rewards transparency, not restraint. So moving on from romance and employment history, let's talk about you. Because this is where the conversation quietly changes. Fitness trackers didn't start as security tools. They started as motivation tools. Count your steps, close your rings, beat yesterday, win today. Simple, it's harmless, it's helpful. But today's wearables do far more than measure your movement. They measure your heart rate variability, sleep cycles and disruptions, stress and recovery levels, GPS routes and habitual paths. When you wake up, when you leave home, when your routine changes, and when your body's under strain. And now, increasingly, they go even deeper. Many platforms expanded into at-home blood panels, hormone tracking, fertility and reproductive health, immune markers, genetic risk indicators. This isn't just health data, this is biometric intelligence. Information that reveals not just what you do, but how your body responds to pressure and fatigue, stress, disruption. That matters because modern intelligence doesn't just ask, where is someone? It asks, how are they functioning? Someone who hasn't slept, someone under sustained stress, someone whose routine suddenly shifts, someone whose biometric signals suggest exhaustion or distraction. Those aren't personal details anymore. They're now risk indicators. And we've already seen how quickly this becomes real. Maybe you remember several years ago when a publicly available fitness heat map unintentionally revealed the outlines of sensitive military locations overseas. Running routes traced base perimeters. Repeated paths revealed guard patterns. Clusters of activity exposed facilities that weren't supposed to exist on public maps at all. Now, this wasn't an espionage operation. There wasn't a breach. No malicious intent. It was just people exercising and data doing what data does best, accumulating meaning over time. Your fitness data doesn't just track your health. It tracks your patterns. The issue isn't that people want to get healthier. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. The issue is that deeply personal biometric data is increasingly treated as a product feature, something to be stored, analyzed, monetized, and shared. And once that data exists at scale, it becomes valuable to far more actors than just the person wearing the device. Because when biology becomes data, and data becomes insight then becomes power. Now, something that's very human is that feeling of wanting to belong. And what feeds into that is DNA testing. It sounds harmless. It's kind of fun. You find out if you're 12% Viking. Maybe you discover a distant cousin in Ohio. You find that connection to one another. You can trace your family back 17 generations. It feels like curiosity, like storytelling, like science in a box. But here's the part most people don't think about. When you submit your DNA, you're not just sharing information about yourself. You're sharing information about everyone you're related to. DNA databases don't work like usernames or profiles. They don't just identify individuals. They identify relationships. If you've taken a test, it becomes easier to identify your parents, your siblings, your children, cousins, even relatives who have never interacted with the company at all. That's not hypothetical. It's how genetic matching works. From a national security perspective, this matters because DNA data doesn't answer the question, who are you? It answers a much more powerful one. Who are you connected to? And connection data scales very fast. When a major ancestry database was breached, the interest wasn't just in raw genetic sequences. It was in ancestral origin metadata, information that could help infer ethnicity, nationality, migration patterns, and family networks. That kind of data doesn't point to one person. It points to populations, to communities, bloodlines. And unlike passwords or credit cards, genetic data can't be rotated or revoked. You can delete an account. You can change a login. You can freeze your credit. But you can't change your genome. Once DNA exists in large searchable databases, it remains useful indefinitely. Not just to the company that collected it, but to anyone who gains access later. DNA isn't just your personal data, it's inherited exposure. This doesn't mean curiosity is reckless. It just means genetic data is uniquely permanent. And when permanent data becomes searchable, it becomes powerful in ways most people never intended. At this point, if you're still thinking, so what? I've got a dating app. I've got a LinkedIn. I've got an Instagram. Who cares? Let's talk about where the real power shows up. Because none of these platforms are dangerous on their own. A dating app doesn't compromise national security. A fitness tracker doesn't topple governments. A resume site doesn't expose a country. The risk isn't the tools, it's the fusion. Modern intelligence, whether ran by states, corporations, or criminal networks, it isn't about collecting one secret. It's about connecting many small truths. When data from different platforms is combined, patterns emerge that no single app was ever designed to reveal. Imagine cross-referencing Instagram travel photos, LinkedIn job history and promotions, a Tinder or Hinge geolocation pattern, your Fitbit sleep and stress data, Strava route maps, Venmo payment notes, Amazon purchase history, DNA ancestry indicators, public records of relatives, school affiliations, property records, PTA rosters, old blog posts. Individually, each data set feels mundane, but together they create something else entirely. It's a high-resolution behavioral portrait. Not just who someone is, but how they live, when they move, who they interact with, what stresses them, what motivates them, what routines they repeat, where they're predictable and where they aren't. This is why intelligence professionals care less about secrets and more about context. Context explains behavior. Behavior enables prediction, and prediction enables influence. Once you can predict someone's reliability, you don't need to pressure them. You don't need to threaten them. You don't even need to deceive them. You just need to show up at the right moment with the right message in the right format. That's the holy grail of modern intelligence. And here's the uncomfortable part. No one forced this system into existence. We build it ourselves. By optimizing for convenience, personalization, and efficiency. Power doesn't come from knowing one secret. It comes from connecting 1,000 ordinary details. This isn't a failure of privacy settings. It's a structural feature of the digital world we live in. And once data can be fused at scale, control doesn't look like surveillance anymore. It looks like insight. Okay, if you're still with me and you're scared to death about your Whoop band or Oura Ring, your LinkedIn profile, your dating profile, Instagram, Facebook, any of it, let's stop panicking and let's start getting professional about it. Because this episode isn't about telling people to delete their apps or unplug from the internet. That's not realistic. And it's not how risk actually gets managed. The goal isn't restriction. The goal is awareness and discipline. So let's talk about how we can do that. One, you can treat lifestyle apps as part of your risk surface. Most organizations map cyber risk. Very few map personal data exposure risk, and that's the gap. Companies should provide clear guidance, not bans, on how employees use lifestyle apps, especially when they hold sensitive roles. That includes simple norms like don't connect personal health or fitness apps to work-issued devices. Disable or limit geolocation whenever possible. Be intentional about what you share publicly, especially roles, projects, and travel. Avoid real-time posting when you're on the move. And periodically review privacy settings across the platforms. This isn't about secrecy, it's about reducing predictability. You can also train executives on digital footprint exposure. Now, senior leaders are the highest value targets, and often the least protected. They're publicly facing. They travel frequently. They're visible online. And they're surrounded by information others want. Executives don't need scare tactics. They need situational awareness. So a short, focused briefing on digital footprint exposure often does more than any other technical control could. You can also apply due diligence to apps people actually use. Companies vet vendors. They audit suppliers. But they rarely examine the apps their workforce relies on daily. Organizations should at least ask who owns the company behind the app. Where is this data stored? Who has access to it? And under what legal regimes? And is the data shared, sold, or analyzed beyond the user's expectations? You don't need perfect answers. You just need informed ones. Also, keep sensitive devices separate. For employees in defense, tech, biotech, energy, critical infrastructure, or government-adjacent roles, separation matters. Personal lifestyle data and sensitive work systems shouldn't live on the same device by default. That's not paranoia. That's basic risk segmentation. Lastly, reduce corporate oversharing. One of the easiest risk reductions is cultural. Employees routinely post more about their company than any adversary could reasonably collect on their own. Timelines, team structures, locations, even internal milestones. Small adjustments in what's shared publicly can dramatically reduce exposure. Every convenience has a cost, and every app has an agenda. The takeaway isn't fear, it's maturity. Because in a connected world, managing national security risk doesn't start in classified systems. It starts with everyday choices, made thoughtfully, not blindly. Let's talk about how all of this fits together. For years, we talked about surveillance states. Governments watching citizens through cameras, files, and force. That's no longer the dominant model. Today, we live inside surveillance ecosystems. They aren't built by intelligence agencies, they're built by companies. They're populated by users. And they're analyzed by anyone with the capability and incentive to do so. No one is forced to participate. We opt in. We opt into the convenience of the swipe, the dopamine of the match, the affirmation of the like, the curiosity of ancestry, the reassurance of metrics that tell us we're doing okay. None of this feels like surveillance because it doesn't feel hostile. It feels helpful. Every tap becomes a data point, and every data point becomes a signal. Every signal contributes to a pattern. And patterns are powerful, and so on and so on and so on. Because once your identity, routines, relationships, and behaviors are mapped with enough precision, something subtle happens. You don't just lose privacy, you lose friction. And friction is what allows people to pause, reconsider, and choose differently. When systems know what you'll do before you do it, what you'll click, who you'll trust, when you'll be tired, when you'll be receptive, influence doesn't need to push. It simply arrives at the right moment. That's the future we're already in. Not surveillance by coercion, but surveillance by convenience. The most powerful systems don't watch us, they learn us. And understanding that doesn't require fear, it requires awareness. Because in a world built on prediction, the most meaningful act of autonomy is knowing when and how you're being measured. Well, let's close this one up. Now, I hope you know, this isn't fear-mongering, it's realism. We're not fighting wars over borders the way we used to. We're competing over something quieter, predictability. The ability to anticipate behavior, to model decisions, to understand people well enough that influence becomes effortless. That's why lifestyle apps matter. Because when you know someone's routines, their relationships, habits, stress levels, sleep patterns, health signals, and their emotional rhythms, you don't need to pressure them. You don't need to threaten them. You don't even need to persuade them loudly. You just need to understand them. That's the digital honey trap. Not deception, familiarity. Not coercion, convenience. Not control imposed from the outside, but influence built quietly from the inside out. In the age of digital honey traps, the easiest target isn't the careless one, it's the comfortable one. And that's today's Sit Rep. Make sure you keep up with Midweek Sit Rep on Substack and YouTube for more on this and other topics. You'll find short clips, interviews, and bonus content. And if you want to support the show, check out our merch on everythingisnationalsecurity.com. Every shirt and hat helps keep us independent and growing. I'm Jerry Fowler, and remember, everything is national security. See you next time. Midweek Sit Rep with Jerry Fowler is an independent production of OpScent Media Group, LLC. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based upon the content discussed. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host, Jerry Fowler, and any guest, and do not reflect the official policy, position, or endorsement of any current or former employer, client, government agency, military organization, educational institution, or any other entity for which the host, Jerry Fowler, may be affiliated. Mention of a company, product, or service does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. Any references are provided for informational purposes only. This podcast does not disclose any classified, proprietary, or confidential information. All discussions are based upon publicly available information and personal expertise. Everything's national security. OpScent Media Group, LLC.